Shalom, guys. Welcome back to another episode here at Yashav Youth Ministries with Casa de Israel Yarah. Thank you again for being there. Like I always say, if you like the content that we're putting up in our channel, like, subscribe. If you have questions, comments, concerns, put it on the comment section down below. So, we're going to start a new book, a new cycle of the book of Shemot or Exodus. Shemot means names. Exodus is the exit from Egypt, the deliverance from Egypt by the hand of God, and so through Moses. And so we're gonna start this journey. We already learned from the patriarchs that by faith they obeyed, and through Abraham, God is starting this redemption of humanity. And so we will see the evolution of what was started by faith, how God then starts to hold himself accountable to that word that he gave Abraham of not only blessing his descendancy, but also through his descendancy, many nations will be blessed. And so we will start the book of Shemot. Okay? So, like I said, there will be a lot of reading. But we start Shemot, Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. And the Haftorah portion of the prophet's portion is Isaiah 27, verses 6 through Isaiah 28, verse 13. And you can also add 29, verses 22 to 23. And Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 3. The Brit Hadashah portion is 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 13 to 25. So, here is a depiction or a little picture of how and where Egypt and Goshen and where Joseph left his family and where roughly it is where we're located in the story, okay? And so, we are going to start understanding what's going on. So the intervening years between the death of Joseph at the end of Genesis and the opening of Exodus, the Hebrews multiplied to the point that the new Pharaoh, probably one who represented a new dynasty or era, fear they would increase, enjoin their enemies, and flee from Egypt. And so this is the dilemma here, right there. The new Pharaoh, which says that he did not know Joseph, in the Hebrew, what it implies is that he did not recognize what Joseph had done and what he had established. He basically ignored all that and said, we have to take control of this because these people have become numerous, powerful, and wealthy. And so he was afraid that because they were so numerous, so powerful, they would leave and join his enemies. And so he decided to oppress them, which did not turn out so good. And so we understand Joseph has carried the promise and has now imparted this mission to his next generations. Jacob blesses Joseph's sons, and so they are here in Egypt, and they are responsible for bringing this promise and carrying this responsibility that has been given to Abraham. The Torah portion starts this way, but before we read it, let's do a Torah blessing. Baruch Adonai Haorah, Baruch Adonai Haorah leolam ba'ed, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim benatan lanu et Torato, Baruch Adonai noten haTorah. Bless Adonai who is blessed, blessed Adonai who is blessed, now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. It says, Wa'ele Shemot B'nei Yisrael Habbayim Mitzrayim Ma Et Yaakov Ish Ubeto Ba'u. And in English, it says the following. These are the names of the sons of Israel, that is Jacob, who moved to Egypt with their father, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Yehudah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and all Jacob. Had 70 descendants in Egypt, including Joseph, who was already there. In time, Joseph and all his brothers died, ending an entire generation. But their descendants, the Israelites, had many children and grandchildren. In fact, they multiplied greatly, so greatly that they became extremely powerful and filled the land. Eventually, a new king came to power in Egypt, who knew nothing about Joseph or what he had done. And obviously, we clarify that he basically, in the Hebrew, it more says that he decided to ignore, to not consider. So he said to his people, look, the people of Israel now outnumber us and are stronger than we are. We must make a plan to keep them from growing even more. If we don't, if war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us. Then they will escape from the country. So the fear is they will escape from the country. More so than joining their enemies, even in defeat, Israel will still just leave. And so that is his fear. Then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gave his order to the Hebrew midwives, Shifra and Puah. When you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the babies are a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. But because the midwives fear God, they refused to obey the king's order. They allowed the boys to live too. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives. Why have you done this? He demanded, why have you allowed the boys to live? So he began to promote a forced labor, thinking that it would decelerate the proliferating Hebrew population. His strategy, however, failed. This prompted the Pharaoh to initiate a program against Israelite baby boys. Right? He ordered the midwives, when you help the Hebrew women in childbirth and observe them on the delivery stool, if it is a boy, kill him. The Hebrew word rendered birth stool literally means 2 stones. Behind this odd word is the Egyptian practice of a woman squatting on a pair of bricks when giving birth. A carved relief in the Cairo Museum portrays a woman in the Egyptian birthing posture, perched on a pair of stone bricks as midwives, which are 2 goddesses, helping her. Okay, so that's the depiction to an extent of what you see. And so the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, they said. They are more vigorous and have their babies so quickly that we cannot get there in time. So God was good to the midwives, and the Israelites continued to multiply, growing more and more powerful. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile River, but you all may let the girls live. Here Pharaoh decides to make a final decision that he is going to take control of this and say, we will kill these boys, because obviously the boys are the ones that will carry this unstoppable fertility in his mind. And so he decides to kill these lives in the Nile, which represents a deity to them. And so put these childs to judgment, and think that he can smart God to an extent, because he is playing God, right? Pharaoh represents a deity, a representation of a deity. Moses' birth and rescue. So after all this, right, this opening scene in which Pharaoh is trying to oppress and force these Hebrew families to stop their growth by killing them. In this scenario, we see how it transitions to Moses, right? The birth of Moses begins. It says, about this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden from the 3 months. All right, so she kept him hidden for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproof. It with a tar pitch She put the baby in the basket and laid it amongst the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood at the distance, watching to see what would happen to him. The baby's mother abandons her child in hopes of saving him. This is a reminiscent of a theme. The abandoned or exposed child who is rescued eventually grows up to perform some heroic deed that turns up in a wide variety of other literature. The story closest to the Exodus account is the legend of Sargon from Mesopotamia. By means of this traumatic event, the biblical text hints to the reader regarding the kind of future in store for this child. Moses has hero written all over him. So that is what is being highlighted. The emergence of a child that is promised to bring forth again that continuity of Abraham's blessing. So it says, years passed and the king of Egypt died, but the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He looked down to the people of Israel and knew it was time to act. After Moses is put in the basket, he's in the river. His sister watches. The princess of Egypt finds him, and because she finds him in the water, she calls him Moses. And so there's a lot of elements behind this, but the idea is that she takes him out of the water, which he survives that judgment that all the babies are going through from this god in the Nile. And as she accepts him, his sister comes and offers to find a woman so that they can take care of Moses, which curiously enough is his mother. So his mother is the one that raises him, and then at of age he goes, right, and he's adopted officially by the Pharaoh princess. But he is knowing his culture and his tradition, right, of the Israelites. And so he is watching over some guards oppressing his fellow Hebrew brothers, and he kills that guard and hides it. And when he corrects his brothers in an altercation, they say, "Who has put you over us?" Right? And so they mention the incident of him killing the Egyptian. When they say, "Who has put you over us? Are you going to kill us like you did with that Egyptian?" And so because of all this, he gets paranoid because he believes that Pharaoh will find out, and Pharaoh does find out. And so he is trying to kill Moses, and he's trying to kill Moses, and he flees to Midian. There he meets Reuel. He protects his daughters. He then obviously repays him with food, home, and marrying Zipporah. Okay, and so in this moment that Moses is going through this transition, and he's leaving everything he has behind to become a different man, is when God decides that, okay, I will act upon their groaning and their crying because it has reached my throne. Okay, so one day Moses was tending to the flock. So now he's a shepherd, and his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, he was leading the flock into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God. There an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. "This is amazing," Moses said to himself. "Why isn't the bush burning up? I must go and see it." When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," the Lord warned. "Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord told him, "I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt, and I have heard their cries and distress because of their harsh slave drivers. And yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of Egyptians and led them out of Egypt into their own fertile, spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, a land where the Canaanites and the Hittites and Amorites, Perizzites, and all the Aites live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abused them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. The time has come where there's a person who is not only willing, but internally, God has seen something in Moses, an ability and a disposition, and he has been separated since birth, and he is someone that knows both worlds, in Egyptian and Hebrew. So he has a wide and broad understanding of both cultures. And so God chooses Moses. And so obviously we learn later on why he chooses Moses, right? The type of character that he carries, similar to Abraham. And so Moses does something very interesting, which is protest. And he says, if I go to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is the name? Then what should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. And it says, Asher Hayai Asher, meaning the one who lives, or the one who is, was, and will be. And so God is saying, I am the creator. And it's interesting because it doesn't imply that Moses was taught this, but in the background there is a culture and a responsibility that it has been maintained to have an understanding of who their creator is and who gave these promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, and so it says, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. Yehovah, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. The opening verses in the opening of the book of Shemot is highlighting the oppression of the Egyptian, not considering how God has saved Egypt through Joseph. And now the people that have been fruitful in that land, now he chooses to oppress them. And so it's not only until Moses is ready and the groanings have reached heaven, and I don't know why it took so long. The point is that Moses in Midian, becoming a pastor of flocks, was the moment where God said, now through you I will fulfill this mission. And Moses doesn't believe that he's fit for it, and so he definitely has a worry, because he doesn't think that he is able to do this, but God chose him for a reason. And the reason why he chose him is because he knew that once he had committed to this mission, he was going to follow it by faith. He was going to listen before walking, and as soon as he heard instruction, he was going to walk in it. And that he was conscious that he wasn't looking for anything to gain from it. He didn't want to do it, right? And so it was a pure manifestation of obedience, okay? And so he was clinging to God, and his faith in the words that God was giving was what took him in this journey. Okay, we get to the New Testament. So here, James or Santiago James, is being judged because of his teachings, and so he goes in a long rant trying to describe, because there is a situation where in history the people of Israel as a whole have clinged to the instructions and have clinged to the material, whether it will be the commandments, word by word, rule by rule, the temple and the structure and the essence of it when it comes to the ritual purity. They cling to that as forms of salvation. and they cling to that as forms of judgment on others. And so, in the times of Yeshua, ritual purity was something considered very high, and the temple was something considered very high, and it was so high and sanctified that it was excluding anybody that was needing healing and restoration. And the temple is supposed to be consecrated and separated for the purpose of healing and restoration, right? Because if you sanctify it and consecrate it, people can come and find healing and restoration. But when you don't sanctify it and don't keep it holy, then what you do is you close it from people, and you also close yourself out from people. And that's what was happening. And so people thought that because they had inheritance, descendancy, they had names, then that gave them the authority, and that had the power, and that God was holding himself to all these elements, and that God represented all these elements, whether it would be the temple, whether it would be the sacrifices, whether it be the commands. And God is not enclosed in the commands and in the structure and in the ritual process. God gives us those elements so that we can either manifest our faith, express our gratitude, and express who we serve. But God is not contained in those elements, because God is more than these things, right? And so what the essence that was missed was that even though we have the commands and we have the temple and we have the rituals and the purification, if we use this to push people away and to close God's kingdom, then what is the point? Okay, so it says, at the time drew near when God would fulfill his promise to Abraham, the number of our people in Egypt greatly increased, but then a new king came to the throne of Egypt. So this is James going through a recount of history and what is the essence of the purpose. All right. And who knew nothing about Joseph. This king exploited our people and oppressed them, forcing parents to abandon their newborn babies so they would die. At that time, Moses was born, a beautiful child in God's eyes. His parents cared for him at the home for 3 months. When they had abandoned him, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and raised him as her own son. Moses was taught all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in both speech and action. One day, when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his relatives, the people of Israel. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite. So Moses came to the man's defense and avenged him, killing the Egyptian. Moses assumed his fellow Israelites will realize that God has sent him to rescue them, but they didn't. The next day he visited them again and saw 2 men of Israel fighting. He tried to be a peacemaker. Men, he said, you're brothers. Why are you fighting each other? But the men in the wrong pushed Moses aside. Who made you ruler and judge over us? He asked, are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? When Moses heard that, he fled the country and lived as a foreigner in the land of Midian. There his 2 sons were born. When Moses heard that, he fled the country and lived as a foreigner in the land of Midian. There his 2 sons were born. 40 years later, in the desert near Mount Sinai, an angel appeared to Moses in a flame of burning bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight. As he went to take closer look, the voice of the Lord called out to him, I am the Lord, your God of your ancestor, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses shook with terror. He did not dare to look. Then the Lord said to him, take off your sandals, for you're standing in holy ground. I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt, and I have heard their groans, and I have come down to rescue them. Now go, for I am sending you back to Egypt. So God sent back the same man his people had previously rejected, when they demanded, who made you ruler and judge over us? Through the angel who appeared to him in the burning bush, God sent Moses to be their ruler and savior. And so, the essence of the beginning of this book is the following. Last year, I had established a train of thought of God is in control, because as he clashes with Pharaoh through Moses, we start to learn that Pharaoh is God, and Pharaoh is a powerful ruler, the most powerful ruler in the time, believed. And so the essence of authority of men was being shook because God was confronting him and helping him understand that he is the one that controls everything, which is what we learned in Genesis. That's why we have the creation narrative. That's why we understood who was the creator. And we also understood who God chose to carry this vehicle of promise and blessings, which was Abraham through Isaac and Jacob, who later becomes Israel. And the essence of the message is that they did all this by faith. They didn't have the structure and the written law to help them. They obeyed from the heart with the right intentions. And so when the people reject Moses, they also reject that correction that was pure, because Moses was trying to help them not fight amongst each other. And when they reject him and he leaves and comes back as the representation of the deity, the essence of Moses is the same. A humble man obeying God's word and voice, which is a vivid representation of Abraham. And later on, Moses says that God will send a prophet like him who will speak and teach in the same humbleness. And the essence of the message is that even though there's a structure and even though there's instructions, God is not contained there. So don't cling to the structures and the words. Cling to the creator. Cling to the one that gave the structure. Cling to the one that gave the word. And when you cling to him, then you manifesting the structure and manifesting the words are going to be fluent. Because there's so many rules that you can create to maintain yourself holy, but you're going to get to a point where nobody can touch you. And that is not the point. Because when Yeshua came, he came to heal, he came to restore, he came to unify. And nowadays, because we follow the structures and the words, sometimes we start dividing each other because we forget about the essence. The essence is that it's not about us, it's about the creator. And when we cling to him, everything that he gave us, yes, we will have to manifest. But the essence is that we follow it by faith in him. And the same way he forgives, the same way he restores us, we have to be willing to do the same. The promise of restoration has to be followed with the right intentions. And is seeking God's will at all costs. Understanding that before anything, we obey the Father and we put our faith in him. Not in the structure, not in the rituals, not in the words, in him. Because he is the giver of the structure, the rituals, and the word. All these people that came before the Exodus, their hope is not tied to anything but the word of God and his promise. And what we learned before this book is that when we hear the voice, we start walking. And there, God reveals himself in that action of faith. It's like I have in my mind, repeated over and over again, the woman of the fluid of blood. She has blood, for 12 years. And the moment she touches the tzitzit of Yeshua, she says, I touched your tzitzit and I was healed. And Yeshua says, no, your faith healed you. Because in that action of obedience from the heart is where God manifests himself. And so, obviously, in this narrative, we will learn that God uses other methods, and God reveals himself in a grander, way through the miracles and through the plagues and the mystical acts of the Red Sea. But the essence of it is God wanting you to seek his heart. So, that's all I got. Hope it makes sense. Guys, I hope it makes sense. I start blabbering away all these thoughts. And, I hope that the Spirit is ministering through me. Because all I want is to do God's will. Because he has blessed me more than you can imagine. And I hope it blesses you. So, have a great week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Like, subscribe. And yeah, like I always say, have a great week. Shavua Tov. And have a beautiful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.